Hey, gonna kind of get started in earnest today. Obviously we spent that first week kind of talking about the war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Arab Spring, and so forth. I wanted to mention something to you guys. I might have mentioned this last week before we left. When we pulled out of Afghanistan 2 years ago, this month, we left a lot of people behind. It was a 20-year war. We left behind Afghan interpreters, we left behind Americans, and so forth. So if you were, let's say you went to Afghanistan in 2001, maybe you served there 2001, 2002, maybe you went back for another tour. We had some soldiers that went multiple tours. But after a 20-year war, you're going to have a lot of guys that fought over there that left the military at some point. Does that make sense? The interpreters over there were so important because we didn't have people that spoke that language. So really, our soldiers were putting their lives in these interpreters' hands. And these interpreters were putting their lives in our hands. Because if the Taliban takes back over, which they did, who would become targets? They would, and their families would become targets. So when we left these people behind, we had a lot of ex-military, including special forces ex-military, go back in and try and get these people out and save their lives. Tonight, at my church, one of those interpreters is going to be speaking at 7 o'clock. Okay, his name is Aziz. Did I mention this to you guys? Yeah. So it is tonight, and it is 7 o'clock, and he's going to talk about his experiences. There's one part on this. We haven't really publicized this, guys. Our church does a lot of missions. They do a lot of missions in the Middle East. That is very dangerous work when you're trying to convert Muslims to Christianity. It's dangerous work. We do the same in China. We kind of keep it on the down low. Okay? Now, so we haven't really publicized this talk on social media. Okay? But I asked my pastor yesterday morning about it. I said, so tell me about Aziz a little bit. And I told him that I just got done teaching my students this. And I said, is it all right if I invite my kids if they want to come? It's free. I mean, you're welcome. I'm sure a lot of you guys have other things going on, or you're just not real interested. It's fine. I just wanted to open an invitation. But one of the things we're kind of not talking about is that Aziz. So that could be very dangerous for him. Retribution against him. So we're just kind of keeping it on the down low. Okay.
Are you going to send in Taliban members to the U.S. and attack him or something like that?
You don't have to send anybody in. They're already here. Yeah. Oh, did I not tell you that we have thousands of people in this country that are part of Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization funded by Iran? Places like Houston, thousands of members of Hezbollah living in the United States. Now, if they're here legally and they don't commit a crime, you can't do anything. This is, we have something called the Bill of Rights. Now, if you start planning an attack, and we find out about it, you can do something about it. Does that make sense? They're called sleeper cells. Not to scare you or anything. You just got to read about it. You know what I mean? They don't talk about the stuff on NBC News, CNN. They don't talk about it. Okay. But anyhow, it's a real thing. They don't want to create xenophobia and stuff like that, too. I mean, because it's kind of unfair to people that are here peacefully and so forth. So we don't want to, profile people in that way, the immigrants in that way. So, all right. So we're going to do a little bit of a review of World War I here, because I know how the human mind works. I know you studied this last year at the end of the year, but you probably forgot a lot. So let's just do a little bit of review. We talk about the causes of World War I. There are three isms that stick out that historians point to. Not Marxism, not communism, not socialism. What are some of the isms? Yeah. Militarism, nationalism. Not yet. One more ism. Think about it. Okay, nationalism, hyper patriotism, if you will. My country is better than your country, and I'm going to kick your ass to prove it. Imperialism. So, like the Austrian-Hungarian Empire wanting to sink south here and take over Southern Europe. Okay, that would be imperialistic. Another factor with that imperialism is this. You guys know the British Empire, probably the best imperialists that ever existed on this planet. That little island controlled 25% of the Earth's surface. They controlled India, Hong Kong, Canada, us for a while until we kicked them out. Many countries in Africa, Far East, I mean, Australia, you know what I mean? Like the British control a quarter of the Earth's planet. And they had the best Navy in the world. Well, guys, with industrialization, Germany was late to the game. I mean, the Spanish were good at this, the Portuguese were good at this, the Dutch were good at imperialism, right? French were good at it. The Italians even got in on the act, okay? But the Germans were late to the game. And they began to challenge Britain militarily. The British didn't really like that. So militarism. How's it going? Are you guys wondering what I'm doing here? Sorry. Okay. So I had teacher's class 4 times a day. I had at least 4 kids missing today. So I'm recording this. This is a Bluetooth. Okay. Record this. I download it. And then I upload it to YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel called Mr. Ebright. If you ever miss class, go on Mr. Ebright's YouTube. I'll have the date and the subject matter of the lecture, and you can watch it. I have over 100 subscribers. So if you ever do end up doing this, be sure to like and subscribe. Okay. So let me give you one more reason that is not in your typical high school history textbook about the cause of World War I. With industrialization, guys, people moved off the farms to the cities, yes? And they worked in what? Factories. What were the working conditions like in those factories? You guys learn about the Triangle Shirt Company last year? Okay. That's just one example, right, of probably thousands. What were wages like for those folks? What about like when they went home, their living conditions in the slums, right? Pollution, unsafe, unsanitary work conditions, overworking people, no like 40-hour work week, no overtime, just mistreatment of the workers. That causes social problems. And then women, not just in this country, but in Europe especially, didn't even have the right to vote. So women were ticked, the workers were ticked, the leaders of these countries, the political leaders of these European nations, all had all these social problems to deal with industrialization. And they wanted to change the subject. What better way to change the subject of all these social ills than a good war? So they were more than willing to go to war to change the subject. Because people in a war tend to rally around their political leaders and support them. And so the social issues tend to go away. With me? Okay, that's one of the causes. Now, for the war itself, I'm going to talk about this because history repeats itself. When Germany invades France, the top German general in World War I was General Schlieffen. General Schlieffen is going to invade through the Netherlands and Belgium. Those two countries are referred to as the Low Countries, along with the tiny country Luxembourg. Invade through the Low Countries into France, trying to take Paris. Before they can take Paris, they are met by French and British troops. Now, the thing about World War I, guys, when you study military history, is that the weapons of World War I were far superior than previous wars. You remember in Civil War, they had the Gatling gun, the machine gun, this big crank, you know what I mean? And they didn't have a lot of those guns. Now the machine gun is mass produced, and really all you have to do is pull the trigger and load the bullets. Artillery. We're not using old cannon anymore. We're using howitzers with shells that explode, that can be fired 20 miles. Okay? Tanks. Now, you guys know the World War tanks weren't that good, but they did have machine guns on them. Okay? And some artillery. And then the air power. Okay, now mostly the air power in World War I is going to be used for reconnaissance purposes, to see where your enemy is. And then, you know, you don't want them looking at you, so they put guns in the planes and shoot at each other. Your first dog fights, if you will, right? And, but here's the thing, guys. The tactics, the strategies, and really the tactics of war did not catch up with the technology. So the technology is better, but the tactics are not. And so when you line up on a battlefield against your enemy, you're going to get chewed to pieces. And so in order for self-preservation, what do? You dig a trench so you can avoid that meat grinder. Okay? So then you use what the technology is available, which is your artillery. You start bombing the other trenches. 24 hours, 48 hours. So if you want to absolutely understand the horror of warfare, look up on YouTube, shell-shocked soldiers of World War I. Have you guys ever seen this? It's absolutely horrifying to look at what happens to human beings when they're shell-shocked. Now, some people can handle this better than others, but if you're in a trench, yeah, there might be a room underneath you can hide, but 24 hours of bombing of your trench, maybe 48 hours, plays on the human brain in a bad way. So now you think you have the advantage because you've been shelling them for 24, 48 hours. So you come out of your trenches, right? And the enemy, they're still there, and they mow you down into no man's land. Now that you've mowed down so many of their soldiers, you now think you have the advantage. So you come out of your trenches, they have more in reserve, and you get mowed down. I got an idea. Let's try this for 4 years. Which is basically what happened. It's horrifying. When that wasn't being successful, they tried different things, you know, like poisonous gas. There were really 4 types of gases used in World War I. One that we still use today, which is tear gas. Okay? You know, National Guard might use that during a riot or something like that. Blinds the eyes temporarily, makes it hard to breathe. Okay? Generally doesn't kill you unless you're old or very young. But chlorine gas, which you can't even see, attacks the eyes, the lungs, internal organs. Phosgene gas, and mustard gas. Those 3 had a fatality rate of about 10%. About 10% of people that got caught in a gas attack died. Probably one of the most famous people that got gassed during World War I was Adolf Hitler. In the last year of the war, he was temporarily blinded and put in the hospital. The war ended. Meteorology wasn't that good. You didn't know what way the wind was going to blow that day. So, yeah, you know, you fire some chlorine gas over at the enemy. And then the wind switches direction and blows it back on your troops. That happened. Okay? Because it was ugly. Now, for our air service purposes, guys, if you look back there in the corner and the back wall, you see I got a lot of planes. Okay, so the one on the left back there is, you know, the Bertha flight, your Wright brothers, the hot air balloons, the Zeppelins, that sort of thing. We used hot air balloons in the Civil War. Did you guys know that? Yeah, just for reconnaissance. So you could go up, you know, 100 feet or so, 200 feet, and, you know, see down where the enemy was. So you could fire your cannon at it, okay? Then your balloon gets shot down. So then you get to World War I, which is what we're talking about. So if you look at that World War I poster, guys, not one of those aircraft is an American-made aircraft. We had 740 pilots in World War I, what was called the American Air Service. Not one of them flew an American plane. We flew French planes. Okay? Now, our pilots did very well. Okay? Those 740 pilots, we lost 231. But we shot down over 700 German planes. Now, of course, everybody knows famous Red Baron, right? Now, how many planes do you have to shoot down to be an ace? 5. So you know that. You know who America's first ace was? It wasn't Rickenbacker. He was German. Billy Mitchell was our first ace. Okay? Shot down 5 German planes. And we'll talk about Billy Mitchell because he's going to stay in the military after the war, and he's going to play an important role. Now, fast forward to the jet age, post-World War II. Well, actually, Germans had a jet. Japanese had a jet at the end of the war. Okay. The ME-262, so you guys know that one, right? 262. Play video games. Okay. Yeah, the Germans came up with a fighter jet at the end of the war. Okay. Now, in the Korean War, Colonel James Jabara, you know the airport over there, right? First jet fighter ace for the United States. In the Korean War, he shot down 5 Russian MiGs. Okay. Yeah, he's a Wichita. The Wichita. Okay. Air capital of the world, right? I guess. That's what they say. Boeing left. It's called Spirit, though, right? We have Spirit. Okay. Trying. Jeez. All right. I know it's 5th hour. You guys are doing great. Okay. Now, so they perform well. Okay. Now, for the United States, in 1914, when this war breaks out, there's 125,000 Americans in the U.S. Army. They've been in northern Mexico. Our U.S. Army, the American Expeditionary Force, has been in northern Mexico trying to hunt for this bandit that's been coming across the border and attacking our border towns. And we got the whole American Expeditionary Force down there looking for this one guy, and we can't find him. Who is he? This Mexican bandit, Pancho Villa. We can't even find this one guy, and we're going to take this army and take it over to Europe and win a war? Kidding. But now, really, we have the 17th largest army in the world. After number 16, Romania. It's an American tradition, guys, to keep a small standing army during peacetime. If you have a huge army during peacetime, all you do is practice. Practice, practice. How many of you guys have ever played a sport or even scholars ball here at Bishop Carroll? You practice, you practice, you practice, you practice, and then you finally get to put the uniform on and play. Like, I'm the baseball coach. We practice 6 days a week. Practice 6 days a week. We get to put the uniform on 20 times. Well, not really, because some of those games are double headers. That's 2 games in one day. You might put the uniform on 15 times a year, but you practice like 70 times. If you have a large army and all they do is practice and practice and practice, the generals are going to get bored, the soldiers are going to get bored, the politicians are going to get bored with it, and they're going to try and find some games. So if those games are called war. So if you keep a small standing army, you're less likely to go to war. Does that make sense? We should do that. Now, by World War I, guys, we've got the 3rd best Navy in the world. We've got a 2-ocean nation. Okay? We're a 2-ocean nation. We need a strong Navy for defensive purposes and to project our strength. Like that poster in the corner says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of all who threaten it with an aircraft carrier. We got 11 of those. China has 3. Russia has 2. Britain has 2. Nobody else has more than that. We got 11. Let's talk about America. I haven't told you yet, we got some issues, folks. You know we got some issues? Here. Our budget this year will be around $6 trillion. What our government will spend. Maybe 6.5. More than 50% of our entire budget we spent on these 2 programs. What are they? Medicare and Social Security. Old people. Old people income. Old people health care. These are called entitlement programs. You don't take them away. 51%. This year, we will spend $1 trillion $1 trillion on the interest on $33 trillion in debt. So you got a $6 trillion budget. The first trillion's coming off the table right there just to pay the interest on what those who come before us have spent. What has come before you? You're 17. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it, guys. You know, we're supposed to leave the country better off for our kids than when we got there. We're not doing that. %, of our entire budget goes to the U.S. military, Pentagon, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, Navy, and the Space Force. Still makes, it's weird. You know what I mean? The Space Force. I'm like, what is that? Okay. You know what that leaves, guys? This piece of the pie right here. 12%. Free and reduced lunches for school children, special ed programs for school children, roads, bridges, and all the other stuff the government does. It's called discretionary spending. Entitlement spending, military spending, interest rates are up. This will be $200 billion more than last year because interest rates are up. And that. This year, this budget, we will take in about $4.8 trillion in taxes, run a deficit of $1.2 trillion. And then the following year, we'll pay more on the interest. Taking more of this pie for this pie. Because we ain't touching this pie. Are we, government students? We're not touching this. We got some problems. You guys understand that? Pretty easy to see. What do? You cut the army, shrink the army. Don't shrink the Navy. Don't shrink the Navy. You gotta have it. Have it. Okay? Obama cut the military, cut spending to the military. We gotta do something. No other country in the world spends more than 6% on their military. Japan spends 1%. They're broke too. What are we going to do? Now, did you know this was a problem? Because a lot of Americans have no freaking clue. Okay? So, what do you got to do? You got to pay attention. You got to vote. Okay? Now, how do we fix this? You can tax the rich. Make Bill Gates pay more. Jeff Bezos pay more. Elon Musk pay more. Now, listen, you can take all their money. These guys are billionaires. They're not trillionaires. You understand? And there's a huge difference. So you can take all their money. You're going to pay for the U.S. government for a few days. Not for a year. Now, those guys all provide a lot of jobs for people who all pay taxes. You understand? Now, if you hurt them, you're going to hurt the people that work for them too. Get a whole ideological thing about taxes. Not yet. We'll wait on that. Okay. Now, all right. So good. What we learned out of this war, guys, we could mobilize for war quickly. Like 125,000 troops. Woodrow Wilson declares war after the Zimmerman telegram. Make the world safe for democracy. That's what he says. Wilson does. WW won World War. Woodrow Wilson. WW. Got it. Okay. Now, 500,000 will be drafted into military service. 700,000 will enlist. Our army goes from 125,000 to 1.3 million in a matter of weeks. By the time the war's over, 3 million people are in uniform. 2 million will go over there. A lot of them, we don't even have boots, uniforms, guns for these guys. Like, we're going to have to kick all this stuff out. And we do. That's one of the successes of World War I. But we got to train these guys. You can't just throw them into combat. General Blackjack Pershing is in charge of the American forces in France. Blackjack Pershing. You guys ever heard of the Buffalo Soldiers? Back during the Indian Wars, we had black soldiers serving in the U.S. military, and their commander, the Buffalo Soldiers, was Jack Pershing. We got the nickname, Blackjack Pershing. Right? He says, I'm not putting these guys in here to fight until they're trained. Okay, so we sent guys over there before they even been trained. We trained them in France. Our American forces saw combat for about 200 days. About 1.2 million Americans saw combat in that 200 days. And we pushed the Allies over the top. So who won? We did. Right? The Americans, we won. Because we got there and then we won. So who won? We did. We like to take credit for that. Right? Anything wrong with that? American. Right? Okay. You guys know, like, these other countries sacrificed a lot. Okay? Now, so did we. 250,000 American casualties. 50,000 Americans died in combat. 57,000 Americans died from disease. See, guys, in 1917, when we got into the war, the Spanish flu, 1917 to 1919, killed between 20 and 40 million people worldwide. There's going to be 40 million casualties of this war. Now, if you were wounded in the trenches of Europe and that wound got infected, which a lot of them did because of the unsanitary conditions, what happened? What had to happen to that wound? To cut it off. So the sheer number of amputations, 40 million casualties, is extremely high. Now the deaths from the war, the combat-related deaths, France, this is dead, not wounded, dead. 1.5 million soldiers dead. Britain, 750,000. Germany, 2 million. Russia, 2 million. Austro-Hungarian Empire, 1.1 million. The Ottoman Empire, 800,000. Italy, 650,000. All told, between 8 and 9 million war-related deaths. How old were these men? 18 to 25. It's a whole generation of young men that will never return to their countries, never marry, never have children, never become leaders in their communities, never work in a factory. This is devastating to Europe, guys. There's a daily reminder on the streets of London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, Istanbul. Because guys, when you lose a leg, you lose an arm, you're going to be able to work in a factory? What are you going to do? You're going to become a burden on society. You're going to wind up homeless in a lot of places. And you're going to be on the street. People are going to walk by you every day and be reminded of World War I and the horrors of that war. Guys, this is the war to end all wars. Nobody wants to ever do it again. Now, the United States, at the end of the war, signs its separate peace treaty with Germany. But the rest of Europe is going to sign the Treaty of Versailles. Now, Russia's going to pull out of this in 1917. They pull out because of the revolution. We come in. Treaty of Versailles is going to punish who and blame who for the war? Germany. $33 billion in war reparations. Germany will not be allowed to have an army greater than 100,000. No air force. The size of their navy will be limited by the Treaty of Versailles. We will take away some of their land. We will demilitarize other parts of their land and punish them, especially the French. Guys, the French hate the Germans because in the 1870s, Germany invaded during the Franco-Prussian War. These damn Germans keep killing Frenchmen. The French are like, no, never again. We're going to make you so weak that you will never rise again. To do it again. How'd that work out? So we learned our lesson after World War II, right? You know, learn your lesson. So instead of punishing these countries after World War II, we invested in them. We made them our friends. Those investments would come back to help us in the long run. And we occupied their countries. We helped them write their new constitutions. We imposed our will on them and then helped them. We haven't had a war since. Well, we've had wars, but not there. Okay? Good? All right, so I just want the main thing I want you to take out of this is remember is the horror of World War I. Because guys, over here in the States, no way, dude. No way. We're not doing that again. And as Hitler comes to power, as Mussolini comes to power, as the Japanese Empire becomes aggressive, these other countries don't want war. Nobody wants war again, except for these dictators. So they're going to have their way. Till it comes knocking on our door, and we're forced to get in. Okay? Good? Oh, real quick, sorry, before I close this. Who drew all these lines? Like, look at this nice, big, bold empire type stuff. Now you got all these lines. Who drew all these lines? Like they created Czechoslovakia. Poland wasn't, then it was. It was, and then it wasn't, and then it was again. And then you get, what's this, Lithuania? Latvia? Estonia above it, right here along the Baltic Sea. And then Hungary and Austria split. What? Yugoslavia? What is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Who drew these lines? To the victors? To the spoils. The British drew these lines. Guys, the modern Middle East, those lines all were drawn after World War I. Who drew them? The British. Okay? Now, when you draw these lines, guys, you create new problems that we're still facing in Europe today. So you create new majorities and new minorities. So ethnic majorities versus ethnic minorities, or religious majorities versus religious minorities. And majorities never mistreat minorities, do they? Look at our own country, okay? Right? So, yeah, new problems. I mean, we fought, there was a war in Serbia, Kosovo, Bosnia, which isn't even on here yet. Okay, Yugoslavia is going to break up and get a bunch of new ones. Okay, ethnic wars, religious wars. Okay, yeah, interesting stuff. Don't you think? All right, come on, mouse. Bye and hello. There and there. Come on. Now, this slide will be up here the rest of the hour, so don't panic on notes or anything like that. In fact, we may not get off this slide tomorrow, so we'll see what happens, okay? One at a time. Got a lot to talk about. Hey, what's up? You got to go? See ya. It's up to you. How much time do I have? You know, like, is this going to be a long thing?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'll go.
Good luck. Okay. Return to normalcy is the campaign slogan of Harding. Okay. I want you to look back in the corner. There's 3 black and white pictures of 3 white men, old white men. Warren G. Harding on the left, Calvin Coolidge in the center, Herbert Hoover on the right. Okay? Those are the 3 presidents of the 1920s. All Republicans. Woodrow Wilson, Democrat. 3 Republicans, and then at 32, we're going to elect Franklin Delano Roosevelt 4 times. Okay? Democrat. So, Harding's running for president in 1920. Return to normalcy. Let's, got the war and all this stuff. Let's get back to normal. That's what that's all about. Okay? But during the war, as I mentioned, guys, Russia's going to have to pull out. They signed a treaty with Germany, Brest-Litovsk or something like that's the name of the treaty. Because in Russia, guys, there's a revolution taking place. And this is sometimes referred to as Russian Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay? 1917. Now, who was in charge of Russia prior to the communists taking over? The Tsar, what was his name? Nicholas. Had a family. What happened to his family? Had a daughter, Anastasia. Right? Yeah, they were murdered. Yes? Murdered. By the communists. Okay? Now, Lenin had been in exile. They kicked him out of the country. He came back. Helped lead this revolution. Okay? Now, you'll notice something about the slide. There's one dominant color here. Red. Okay? This is the Soviet flag, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The hammer and the sickle represent workers. Okay? Whose flag is this? China. Anybody know what color the Vietnamese flag is? It's red. Now, when we started this community system, and I got placed in Max Colby, some of you others. Max Colby's awesome, right? Saint. What he did was impressive. Dude, I hate red. I really dread wearing this shirt. First of all, I don't look good in red. And Maze is red. And I hate Maze. They're my rival. And I freaking hate communism. The color red is synonymous with communism. You ever hear somebody called a red, they're being called a communist. So when I say red, you say communist. Red. Red. Got it. Okay? They're synonymous. Go back and watch old movies, or even not that old movies about old times. You guys ever see the movie Cinderella Man? Boxing. Great movie, based on a true story during the Depression. They go into the Central Park in the Hooverville, and they're talking about the Reds. Commies. Your parents and I grew up in the Cold War. We understood what communism was and what it was about. You guys, you're all post-Cold War people. You don't know. So I'm going to teach you. Tomorrow, we explore communism, socialism, capitalism, seminar. Listen, call somebody a pinko. Or what? Not a full-blown commie. Or what? Pinko. Socialist. Bernie Sanders. You guys know Bernie Sanders? Feeling a burn? Socialist. I like Bernie Sanders. Why do I like Bernie Sanders? Because he says what he is. There's a lot of people in this country that are socialists, but they won't say it out loud. Bernie Sanders says it out loud. I said, great, thank you. Let's debate it. What works better? Socialism or communism? Socialism or capitalism? Let's debate it. Let's have a talk. But if you're hiding who you truly are, you're a snake. You're a wolf. Sheep's clothing. I just want to play Santa Claus with your money. I'm not that bad. As you point a gun at me to take my money. Come get it. Come get it. All right, we're going to have fun, guys. It's going to be great. Pick it up tomorrow.